Guru Nation, welcome back to another episode of Random Musings from the Clinical Trials Guru. This one's special, right? The hardcore, the day one Guru Nation people. You guys know Jay Pitts. Jay was an oncology CRA, one of the first CRAs I've ever interviewed on this podcast. Jay, they used to be scared until Jay came through and changed that mold. There's no need to be afraid. Jay came through, shed so much light on this industry from the perspective of a coordinator, then a CRA. Well, guess what, guys and gals? Right now, you see behind Jay, Clincept, our clinical, your concept. He's been a side owner for about a year and a half, almost 2 years. And he's been making noise, waves, getting success, and we're just going to unpack a lot of that stuff because I'm in that same boat again. I put myself back to a startup founder where you can see behind me lab kits. Like, this is my office. I'm the coordinator, the budget, everything. It's comes through me, biz dev.
Yeah.
So Jay, I know you live that life too, and you're about a year ahead of me, actually, because I started this about 6 months ago. And you're a year and 6 months into it. So this will be a fun one for me too, because I get to pick your brain, ask you questions. How'd you do it, Jay? But first of all, Jay, let's talk about why. Why would a very successful CRA that can name their job, right? Name your salary.
Yep.
Why would you do this? The enemy of great is good enough. Why didn't you become a victim of good enough?
Man, first and foremost, I am ecstatic to be back here with my brother from the West Coast.
That's right.
Man, yeah, I'm glad to be back, man. This, when we get together, it's always good content. So
always, man.
Yeah, man. So I did the whole career path. Don't have any research experience. You get some research experience as a coordinator. You climb as a CRA. You kind of build your reputation as a CRA. Work for several different industries till you get to the point where you become, expert in oncology, so to speak. Oncology is kind of like the cream of the crop in CRA world. And
Yeah.
I did that, got some good experience. And then, I'm a climber. That's what I do. I climb. And I felt like there was still more for me to obtain. It was still more ways for me to grow. And ultimately, my goal, my vision has always been to obtain, autonomy. Honestly, I want to be as independent as I can and to affect or impact the industry as much as I can before, I decide to hang up the cleats. So, it's a new chapter in my life. God has definitely graced us and blessed us. And as Dan mentioned, it's been about a year and a half, approaching 2 years. And, it's been a wild journey, but we're certainly growing. A lot has happened since this last interview, which was special. And I'm ready to talk about it. So let's go, man.
Yeah, absolutely, Jay. Thank you so much. How long ago was that? Do you remember? Because I know it feels like it wasn't that long ago, but it must have been a few years.
Yeah, it was a couple years ago. It was a great interview. A lot of good back and forth. And at that time, me and you were talking, and I was telling you, I mentioned you. I said, man, I'm thinking about doing something in terms of maybe starting to either, looking into the CRO world or, site. And my man said, Jay, you need to check out this site life. I said, all right, gotcha.
Site life. I'm glad you did. CRO life is tough. CRO.
Yeah.
But there's a way to do it, but I think you need to be a tech minded first. Like, if that's really the only way you're going to compete, but that's a whole nother podcast. But Jay, you said two things earlier. You said you wanted to create timing, so you didn't want your success to necessarily be dependent, your financial success to be dependent on your time necessarily.
Right.
And CRAs, they have a lot of financial success, but it's 100% their time. There's no way they could leverage the time. I mean, maybe if you're a fancy CRA and you're a contractor, you hire an assistant to do your trip reports or your billing, little things, right?
Right.
But it's still, you're not removing yourself from your hours and then the output you get, which is your revenue.
Right.
And you said you wanted to impact as many people as possible, or more people than possible, as being a CRA. So site owner is really the way to do that. But what is it about your mindset? Were you always thinking this way? Like, as far as you can remember, like, when did you have this shift? Because most CRAs don't think like this.
Well, I tell you, man. It's a lot of things that you said. So I've always been one. So I tell my boys, I say this all the time. I got two boys, and I say, listen, y'all, you only get one life. There's no reset button. There's no start over. There's no do over. You only get one life. So make the most out of that life. And so that's something that I live by. And so I knew that, being a CRA, I had obtained and achieved goals that, people in my family prior had not achieved. I had reached numbers and financial success that we haven't seen in the Pitts family. And so, I was certainly proud of that. But when you're a climber, you're a climber, and that's who I am. And so, you're right, man. As a CRA, the CRAs that's going to listen to this, and even the coordinators that might not have been exposed to this, you guys will be familiar with this as CRAs, and they call you site managers. You manage a site. You're a site manager, but you're never the boss. And it's a huge clear line in between that. And as Dan referred to, yeah, you definitely are restricted by the time, and you can make really really good salaries, but you're never going to work 40 hours a week. That's just the nature of the beast. I have friends that are kind of went out and they're taking these contracts and stuff like that, which is great. And I started to go down that road, but at the same time, the trade off was even more time. And so I felt like my time after a while, the time became a little bit more valuable than just the numbers. The numbers were great. And it was nice being in demand for once. Companies reaching out to you, recruiters reaching out to you constantly. But I mean, you're giving up 60. I mean, you're coming in the door. They're asking you, "Hey, you good with traveling 70%?" And you got to be okay with it. That's kind of the nature of the beast. And 70% nowadays is like, that's like very reasonable. And in terms of impact, man, just real quick, just to unpack that, I did this presentation. We had an emerging business competition here in Columbus about a year ago, and my company won in the city of Columbus, and it was really cool. But my presentation was based off of the disparity of minority participants in research compared to the predominant Caucasian community, and it's especially African Americans and Hispanics as well. Man, it's crazy. And one of the things that I did in my research is that I found out is that less than 5% of clinical research participants are African Americans. And we're talking about drugs that's going to impact the physiological aspects, the psychological aspects, probably, just the whole. We're going to push a drug that is going to be targeted to the entire population. And minorities, especially African Americans, don't represent 5% of the entire population.
Right.
So it was important for me to get into an area or do something that I can impact my community specifically. And we've been about that, man. We did a medical device study. Dan, I'll share this with you. Medical device study, and I can say, man, 85% of our participants were African American. Very proud of that.
That's something that I'm glad you brought up. Obviously, that's a huge issue in the industry. But what the industry's done, it's not just the underrepresentation, and this is especially for African Americans. And then if you want to take it to Africa, Africans.
Right.
They've been, Tuskegee, everybody knows,
Yep.
right? There's been a lot of funny business with HIV research in both the African American community in the United States as
Right.
well as in Africa itself.
Right.
So it's not just underrepresentation, it's deeper than that. And I think those communities, they know that because word of mouth travels fast. So
1,000%.
as an African American dealing with African American patients, do you get those hesitations from the community?
Absolutely. Heck, I have them.
Like, what do they say? What do they say? Do they bring up Tuskegee, or what do they say?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. Tuskegee. I'm first of all, I'm in Georgia. I mean, we're neighbors with Alabama, so I mean, and that's not far away. So I hear that, all the time. And here's the thing, man. Again, I live for the challenge, and so I'm passionate about my community at the same time. So yes, it comes out. You mentioned HIV, but I mean, you talk about exploitation in general. Henrietta Lacks, the HeLa cells. There's a lot of different cases in our history where African Americans, for lack of a better word, probably have been exploited as research subjects, and it's a black eye in history. However, it's certainly an issue and a topic that we need to face head on, and we strive to do that. And that's one of the pillars within ClinCEP. Excuse me. We stand on three pillars. Dan, the first pillar obviously is clinical research, but the second pillar, and these other two are just as important. The second pillar is medical education. Third pillar is community engagement. And the thing about it is the biggest problem is you can't go to. I'm gonna speak. I'm gonna speak directly now. You can't go to an African American and say, "Hey, come be a research patient in the trial." It's not going to work because there's generations and generations of distrust, of just built up white coat syndrome that we label it, but it's, hey, this happened to my uncle, this happened to my grandfather, this happened to, and these are situations that can't be ignored. And the only way to reconcile them is to face them head on. So what we do a great job of is not just recruiting subjects, it's educating subjects, explaining to them why we do it, what this is about, but not even the study itself, but the topic, right? So we talked a little bit. If we had a study, we had a group of people that dealt with lupus. We'll get somebody, we get one of these doctors, specialists in there to talk about lupus, arthritis, the same thing. It doesn't matter. So we do a good job of trying to educate our patients outside of clinical trials, which is just as important. And when you get known in the community for doing that, then people are a little bit more reluctant. The people are a little bit more willing to give it an opportunity. And so that's why we've had the numbers and the success that we've had with African American populations, man.
Yeah, no, congrats to you. I've always said, and I've always thought, what, if we can get more minorities working in the space, and I think there's a lot of groups like Black Women in Clinical Research is one that comes to mind. They actually inspired us to do Latinos in clinical research for the same reason. Like, let's get more. If we want more members of those communities in studies, we need to get more people like Jay, entrepreneurs in the space, African American minority entrepreneurs, clinicians, PIs, sub-Is, coordinators. Doesn't hurt for CRAs as well.
Right.
With that being said, though, are you on LinkedIn? You go on LinkedIn, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And link to Jay's LinkedIn underneath the show notes for everybody to go connect. You must see, like, sometimes, I'm just going to keep it real, okay? Like, from pharma and from CRO, a lot of virtue signaling, like, oh, this is what we do for patients, patient centricity, or we need more diversity in the space. But in actuality, very little is being done by those groups. Where we have some action is at the smaller groups, like the grassroots, like people like Adam Brown with ClinArc, Danielle Coe with Black Women in Clinical Research, you with ClinCEP. I mean, on the local level sites, people like you. What is your thoughts on industry's response to this?
I got a saying for it. Lots of plans, very little solutions.
That's actually true. Lots
Yeah,
of planning. They've been
yeah,
planning for decades.
yeah. I mean, anybody can go in and write, a 15-page, plan, strategy,
White
and
paper.
write white paper on how to attack it. But a lot of these proposed plans, number one, aren't solutions, and number two, are hands off. And so,
Right,
you have to, again, you have to not only confront the problem, but you have to go to the communities and listen. Find out what the real issues are. It can't be, they have a problem. Here, let's do a 15-page white paper on how to address their problem. That doesn't work.
right,
Especially when we're talking about intrinsic issues like distrust, or, just apathy, and the apathy that stems from, generational issues. So, no, it's the only way to do it is to get out here and have real conversations. And the thing about it that's frustrating, it's kind of ironic, right? Because when you get out there and have real conversations, you're doing research, you know. But so it's kind of ironic. But the thing about it, man, it requires people that can see people beyond just a subject number or a subject ID, and have a desire to really want to change the industry, and not just try to, always say, oh, let's do everything we can to get this drug approved. We have to
hmm
be about real change.
Well,
In my opinion.
I'm glad you brought that up because we would we would have just talked business the whole time. But I think it's important to bring up this diversity. Obviously, it's a hot topic in the industry, but you're actually one that's doing something about it.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you brought that up, and I'm not surprised that you are successful when it comes to making an impact in your community. So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
When did you decide, all right, I'm going to start a site and I'm not going to be a CRA anymore? Because that's when you make it official. Or was there a transition period where you were doing both?
Yeah. So I went through a little tough time, man. I lost my dad. It's my stepdad, but he's like my dad, like, to COVID. Um,
Wow.
and
My
yeah, I
condolences.
appreciate that, brother. And when that happened, man, I took some time off of my CRA job, and I tried to go back, and mentally, it was extremely tough, with this whole new pandemic life, and then, caring for my mother, and then, it's just other personal stuff. So that was a point where I kind of took some time to reflect, like, and well, my own personal mantra kind of hit me back in the face. Jay, you only get one life.
Mm.
You know, prayed about it. Uh, um, and I talked to my wife about it. I was like, babe, I know we're good. It took us some time to get here, but I really want to do this. And my rock said, hey, this is what you feel. I'm behind you 100%. And that kind of freed me up, um, because it's very difficult to try to work off two laptops and try to be a two people. It's a difficult life, man. So,
Yeah.
um, and that's just being real. But the thing about it, man, is I took the plunge. It was extremely tough. I emptied out my savings, my bank account, took out a small loan, and I said, if it fails, it fails. But you won't know until you try. And so, I've been running ever since, man. It's been about 18 months or so.
Did it give you more confidence knowing that, okay, you're oncology CRA, so even if you were to lose it all, you could just go back to any job
Yep.
whenever you wanted?
And I didn't see it, because sometimes when you're in the situation,
Mm.
you don't see your solutions. My wife said it though. She's like, all else fails, you just go get another CRA job.
Smart wife you got
Yeah,
there, man. You got to keep her.
yeah. So yeah, you're telling me, and so I'm like, you're right, because I'm thinking about, how I'm gonna make payroll, how I'm gonna get the studies, how I'm gonna get the doctors, how I'm gonna get the, all of this stuff, man, employees, and so, at that point, it was just, the climb is one step in front of the other.
So what? How did? Okay, so you had this idea. did you have a doctor in mind? Um, what was that like? How many did you have to go through until you got one to agree to work with you?
Great
Uh,
question, Dan. I'm gonna throw this out there because I need everybody to hear this. Starting a company is messy. It's get that in your head right now. It's never going to be. It's never going to be step one. Do.
Wait,
Step
so it's
two.
not like a CRA where you have a SOP manual telling you
Nope.
how to act in every situation?
Right. Nope. Nope. It's not at all. You know what it's like? If it's like anything with a CRA, it's like catching a flight home when it get canceled and you got to rebook the next flight. That's what it's like. It's messy, man.
Good analogy.
Yeah. But I mean, so I had a plan. You know, you do your business plan and you make it as eloquent and you can draw pictures and illustrations and all this crap on it. You can write the 6 month, 12 month, you know, 24 is 36 month forecast, projections, revenue, all of that stuff. It's still messy. You can have, you know, pre-agreements with these doctors that, yeah, I'm interested. Yeah. All you got to do is start it. I'm there with you. I got you. And it's messy. Everything changes, and it changes really, really quickly because your priorities aren't necessarily their priorities, right?
Yeah.
So that's something I learned kind of quickly. I had doctors that were interested. I've worked with doctors for some time on both sides, so I knew quite a few doctors. You probably can tell I'm very relational. Like I mean, you know, I just like good people. That's just who I am. And I value relationships. So I had that working for me. I had a good database to start from. And you know, you get a good doctor, you get a good patient population, excuse me. You know, and with my contacts I had built up in the industry, I felt very good about it. But that savings account depleted real quick,
Fast.
real fast, man.
What did you like? I mean, okay, it was depleted on just your own personal expenses, or you investing in the business? Like, what? Where did that money go?
So both. And mostly, so you have to use some obviously to pay the mortgage, to you know, to keep the household stuff going.
Hmm.
But you know, you also have to, you know, now you have a space that you need. It's very, very difficult for me to work out of my house because I found that I'm extremely less productive working out of my house than in an office setting.
Hmm.
Uh, and then at the same time, you have to be tactical and you have to have strategy. You have to prepare for it now, but you also have to be thinking about the future as the visionary. You always have to. One doesn't supersede the other. And so you have to, you know, make a life for now and have be thinking about later. And a lot of times that requires bringing in another set of hands and eyes and perspective. And so that's a payroll. That the minute you introduce somebody else, that's a payroll because you're not really going to be paying yourself. You know, it just
Right.
doesn't happen. And so let me throw it out too. Yeah, no, you're not going to be getting a paycheck early on. Just accept it.
At least a
Um,
year, if not more.
right. Exactly. And, you know, so you start introducing people. And then every time you get a perspective study, or even if you get a study, then, hey, do I have the equipment for that study? You know, I got interested in NASH studies real quick. And I realized I got disinterested in NASH studies real quick too. And I realized how much that FibroScan costs. So,
Yeah. Seriously.
yeah. So it's little stuff like that. You know, you try to catch low hanging fruit, something that can kind of get you, you know, to survive. Leverage your relationships. That's why, you know, it's in good. It's really important to be you know, try to be a good person and not burn bridges wherever you go. Leverage those relationships. Make friends in the industry, and make that sure it's a two-way. Don't always come with your hand out. Make sure you can be accessible when people need you as well. It's just, I mean, utilize your relationships, build a community, and cherish that community.
So you got your first doctor interested. Did you know this doctor before, like as a CRA? You knew this doctor?
So the first three no's I got, I knew these doctors, and they
Or
were
the first
previous.
three no's?
Yep. The first doctor I actually got, I had no idea who he was, and so I had to go on one of those search engines and find me a physician, and basically plead with this guy to give me a chance
Wow.
as a
Did
yep.
you use LinkedIn or you just Google?
It was more one of those NDs. I can't even think of what it was. One of
Oh.
those type of search like job things or whatever the case may be.
Hmm.
But it was one of those where, and you know, there are examples out there when hospitals and stuff are kind of recruiting for their physicians. You can kind of do a skeleton of that. Obviously, it's not going to be anywhere the same
Wow.
because the research compensation structure is completely different than like a hospital physician.
Because
So,
you're in the
but
same
learning,
type of community as mine, I think. Like Columbus, I've never been there, but from what I imagine, it's somewhat similar to Yuma, like a small town. A lot of the doctors are either
either
hospital employees, right?
yep, yep,
So
already
you were
plugged.
going, because that's something I haven't done yet, because mainly because I don't have my own office. I haven't gone to the hospital to recruit their doctors, but you're saying a lot of those doctors that work for the hospitals also want to do research on the side.
No, no, not that. No, what I'm saying is, I went to the search engines, like the employment search engines, and what I did is I created my own little job description, but I used like job descriptions that hospitals will post. You know
Ah,
what I'm saying?
okay, okay, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And so the first doctor that I got to say yes, he was private practice. He wasn't a hospital physician. A lot of
Ah,
we have in here, Columbus, we have two main hospitals, and one of them is very difficult to work with the doctors inside the hospitals because the way their contracts are written.
yeah.
So you're probably familiar with that.
Not yet, but I can
But
imagine they're like that.
yeah, so it's difficult. I have a few doctors that I've spoken with and said, you know, the time's not right. I'm interested, but the time's not right due to my fulfilling my contract. You know,
Mm.
and so again, it's that, and that was the case with one of them for sure that was interested from the beginning. But when you start going and pulling up the contract, you start seeing all of these clauses in there that just kind of shuts it down before it even really gets started. So it's a lot of failure. It's a lot of failure. I had a great conversation with the guy today. They gave me some ideas um, um, on how to take approach it in terms of like maybe even hiring a sales rep, you know, and paying him on commission for
Yeah.
doctor. And that's something that's new for me that I'm certainly considering. But again, for me, I'll say this for me. My biggest bottleneck is my physician pool. And I think for most of the individuals starting out, if you desire to be a site owner, I will say this: get to know the doctors in your communities. I've
Hmm.
known a lot of them, and I still don't feel like I know enough. So get to know your doctors. They make and break everything to me.
Hmm. I think in the more of the underserved communities, because I've always lived in big cities like LA, Anaheim, Orange
Yeah.
County. There's so many doctors there that the salaries are competitive, meaning they don't get paid as much as they do in like these communities where I'm at. I imagine where Columbus as well. These are underserved community. They have to incentivize doctors to come. There's
Yeah.
doctors here that live in Orange County that come here
Wow.
just to work. There's doctors that fly into Yuma from
Wow.
other states just to work 4 days a week and then fly back. So, like for me, that was one of the challenges was like the money because
Yeah.
in Orange County, LA, like an extra 6 figures a year to a doctor's meaningful. Here, a little less meaningful. It's still meaningful no matter where you are, but
Yeah.
less so. So not just the smaller pool, but the demand for their services is greater here. So
That's a really good
kind of
point.
at a disadvantage also in that regard.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so you got your first one to say yes. This was someone you did not know before,
Right.
and he said, I assume it's a he.
Yep.
He said, "You're gonna have to get your own space."
No. No.
No.
No. I moved in with him.
Wow. Okay.
Moved in with him. I worked out a really good contract. Um, and again, to me, and I'll say this about all, and it's just another really good tool tip. I hope y'all are listening. This is another really good
They
relationships.
better be listening.
Man, relationships are key, y'all. Relationships are key. Um, And the reason I say that is because I worked out a really good deal with my doctor, who was gracious enough to give me time to get established. Because
Yeah.
when I explained to them in detail how this can be profitable to them, however, being a new a new relationship, it would take a little bit of time. He was absolutely on board. But the key was two things. It was my relationship with him, respecting who he was, and really going out above to be as transparent as possible, even in my shortcomings and my, that, as well as my ability to just keep it real with them, I guess.
Mm.
It's kind of the transparency thing. They really, latched onto that. And so build relationships and cherish your relationships.
That's almost the same setup I had here. Like where I'm sitting is not my office. We're not renting. We're not to the point where we can rent our own space yet. But the doctor here, I found him before we moved. It was through LinkedIn,
Yep.
and my wife actually helped. She mapped out like all the doctors, so I just messaged all of them on LinkedIn. LinkedIn Premium. He didn't reply for 3 months. He took 3 months to reply because he said he doesn't check LinkedIn that often. So I forgot I messaged him.
Yeah.
He replied, said, "Yeah, I'm interested. Let's do a Zoom." The next week, I'm out here looking at his office. I said, "Yeah, this will work. Put me anywhere. We'll get you studies." And then we had like from July till October. So July, August, September, like 3, 4 months.
Yep.
There's no studies, right? You're just
Right.
like in his office. There's no real reason to go.
Right.
But I went at least once a week to keep touch with him, have touch points, because I
Right.
don't want him to say yes and then I don't do anything until we get a study 3 months later. He might forget who I am by
Right.
then,
Right.
right? So every week I would come in, do touch points, like 5 minute meeting, 10 minute meeting, and then that naturally progressed into okay, our first site selection visit. Now I'm staying more. Now I'm pre-screening. So it
Right.
sounds very similar,
Right.
what you're saying to what I did as well.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
I think people need to understand that because they think, okay, I'm gonna get the doctor, he's gonna say yes, and then everything's gonna be fine. After that,
Building,
it's like you said in the interview, their priorities are not the same as your
right.
priorities,
Right.
and
Building a business is messy. I can't stress that enough. It really
hmm
is.
hmm. So, how long did it take to get your first study from when the doctor said yes?
Oh man. So if he said yes in August, my first study, it was very similar to yours. We did our PSV in early November, no, late October, and then we initiated. Was it? It was like the 10th or the 14th or something like that in November. So it was a couple months.
How'd you
And
get that study? Like, what people don't understand, they don't just fall out of the sky because you say you have a site.
right, exactly. So and there's several ways to do it, and I think I told the listeners in this last video, y'all, I'm gonna try to be as helpful as I can. And I said that, man, and I got a lot of responses. But I understand the struggle, and I try to help as much as I can to be transparent. There's SMOs out there that can help with getting studies. But the biggest, well, that's one of the other way to do it is clinicaltrials.gov. That's what everybody tells you. That's really hit and miss for me. I'm gonna be honest. But for me, I think the easiest, the most efficient way for me has been to leverage my relationships in the industry. And so, as a
LinkedIn?
CRA, uh, LinkedIn, not secondary, primary is to the places I've worked. And so, or the people that I've met, the other CRAs that I've met on the road.
So
Because
your
I'm all,
sphere of influence.
absolutely.
So
And
you're hitting
community.
them up. Jay, you do a good job at that, man. I got it. Now that you mentioned that, I'm thinking about all the times you text me,
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh, Jay's out here hustling right now. That's good. By the way, we need to network more because now we site owners on different coasts. We
Yeah.
got to help each other out. So I'm
Got to do
definitely,
it.
you're in my sphere of influence for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's good that you brought that up. So your sphere of influence.
Yeah.
And then how did, like, CRAs, let's say you used to work with a CRA and
Right.
let's say she still works as a CRA.
Mhm.
So what does she say when you call or text and say, hey, I got a site. Can I get a study? Most of them will say, well, I don't have something now, Jay, but, in the future, maybe.
Well, they're on the road doing something. you know, they get paid to do something, and so if they say, "Yeah, man, we're out here," I have to go to this site. I'm doing a PSV over here, or SIV over here. I'm like, really? What indication? Asking those type of questions. And so
Okay.
here's the thing, and all my CRAs will know this too. CRA game is a high turnover game. So you may
Yes.
start at one pharmaceutical or a CRO, but either you're going to get a better offer, because I tell you, those recruiters they still calling me to this day.
Oh, they
They
yeah.
they're going to blow you up. Either that, or you're going to get overworked at the place where you are, you know, and be like, just going to find a better. So it's really high turnover.
Thirsty.
So you have,
Thirsty.
yeah, yeah. So
I
I have
had
a good
one
friend.
CRA, the one who did the SSV here. She said, she like this SSV is my last day here, so you'll get the study, but this is you're having new. I said, well, who are you going with? She said a recruiter kept calling. I kept telling them I'm not interested because I'm happy where I'm at.
Yeah.
This is what she said. The recruiter told her verbatim. How much will it take for you to no longer be happy with where you're at?
Wow.
Like that.
Wow.
That's how thirsty they are right
I can
now,
believe it,
guys.
though. I can believe it. Yeah, I can believe it. And I say the same thing. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm actually, I kind of bowed out from the CRA life a week later, week and a half later. Hey, we got this opportunity. I'm like, nah. So, you just leverage those, man. Let your friends be, just extensions. Let those guys be the ones that are introducing you to the new CROs and pharmaceutical companies.
I see. So let's say in this hypothetical, you call an old colleague and she's like, "Oh, Jay, it's all good. I got an asthma study right now. These site initiations are driving me crazy." What do you say if that's like, let's say you want an asthma study? What do you say? Like, how do I get this?
Right. So if it's a friend of mine, I'd be like, hey, who's the project manager on it?
Okay. Okay.
Who's running the study? Because the project manager either has to say so, or they can point you in the direction of who has to say so.
Mm-hmm.
And typically, if it's a friend of yours or somebody that knows you well, they'll vouch for you. And so, a lot of times, man, it's just really connecting on that human element, saying, "Oh, this guy right here, he's a good guy." And so I've had opportunities I've had to pass up because like I was speaking before this, a dermatology opportunity. I passed it up because
Yeah.
I didn't have a dermatologist. But it's a lot of times, man, just getting in there and allowing your network or your sphere of influence to work for you. So those
Okay.
project managers are key.
Okay. So that's the first challenge is getting the doctor. The next challenge, getting that study.
Right.
Then becomes either hiring or finding patients. I prefer finding the patients first, then hiring. I try to hire last, mainly because I've been a coordinator, so I can do it.
Right.
Was that your strategy too? Like,
That's a really good question. I'm gonna throw this back at you. I actually hired first, and I'll tell you the reason why I hired first, because it did two things for me. Now that I'm paying money out, it made me kick myself in a whole nother gear. Number one.
yeah, that'll definitely.
Number one. Three reasons. Number two, it forced me to what I talked about: prepare for now and prepare for later. And three, it allowed me to build systems for when the study came. So I did not have to be the coordinator as much. And so now I have somebody when that study comes, is literally I'm a be the beta guy for you. So I'm gonna do the PSV, I'll do the SIV. You're gonna sit there and watch it, but you're gonna hear them say exactly what I told you they were gonna say because I've done it so much.
That's right. That's right.
And then because I've been a coordinator, you're going to know exactly what to do. Now, you're going to make mistakes, you're going to make errors and stuff like that because, it comes with the job. But at the same time, your learning curve is going to be a lot less because you've been with me so long and I've reinforced the same principles all the time. The most critical documents, the 4 visits, like what did that look like? What is it? What are the elements that what are the compliancy issues? What's protocol deviations? These elements that they're not going to be just acronyms and terms to you. You're going to know what they are, whether we
Mm-hmm.
have a study or not. And so it was a stretch. You're seeing that money come out your account every 2 weeks, but once that study came, man, the reason why I say that, because study recruitment, I got it back in study recruitment.
Are you doing the recruiting, or did you hire one coordinator?
Yeah. Well, I have 3 coordinators now.
Now you have 3, but you initially hired one, and then were you doing the recruiting, or you had the coordinator do it?
So it's basically, I niched it out. So I gave them one specific task. This is going to be your niche. This is what you're going to do. And I will do something like recruiting, right? But because we spent so much time prepping on what a coordinator looks like, um, the system part, the schedule of events wasn't as tough, because it was more or less, I'm following a set of instructions. I know how to prepare for a visit. I'm not coming in. Let me say this too. Don't let your coordinators come in 30 minutes before, 15 minutes before a visit, or when a patient gets there. They need to be prepped for that visit way before in advance, because it makes your time more efficient. And I believe in efficiency. So the visits are already prepped, and so they have that additional time, because the visit's going to run seamless. They have that additional time to recruit. So now I can move to step 2, which is, okay, this is what patient recruiting looks like. These are the sources of recruiting that we use, and this is how we approach each type of recruiting source. And so my coordinators now, all 3 of them, and I have one that's a lead coordinator, all came in with 0 experience. I've trained them individually. I invested my time to train them individually, and now my lead coordinator is the one that's responsible for training them.
Wow! So you basically built the system out. Are you using a eSource or paper source?
eSource. And so I'm with, yeah. I actually,
Creo?
I started. I'm with Creo, brother.
Okay.
And so, that came from a good friend of mine, Elaine, up in Atlanta. Shout out to my friend up in Atlanta. So I started with paper, but we moved to Creo, and I love it.
Smart move. I used Creo from the beginning. I lied. I did hire someone very part-time. She's a CRC Academy graduate, to do eReg and eSource. She doesn't live here. She lives in Missouri, but was one of our better students from the CRC Academy. So I hired her to set up Creo. So I at least outsourced one aspect so far. I'm not ready yet. I need to bring an MA and kind of train them like you did on doing the studies. But that's coming. That's coming. Yeah. We got to find the patient to actually qualify. I had 3 screen fails in a row, man. That's all I have to show for it so far is the startup payment and 3 screen fails in a row. But it'll come. It's
coming. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what people need to understand. Like it's kind of anticlimactic. I mean, even before we started recording, I asked you, like, when did you start? It's not like you have a date,
Right.
It's just, it kind of just started. Like the doctor says yes, and then you get to work. But I mean, how do you define when it started? When they said yes, or when you decided you're going to start, or when you got your first study, or when you got your first patient in the study? I mean, who knows how you're going to define that, right? You just started.
Yep. It's the same way with anything in life, man. It's like confidence. Like at what point do you become confident in something? It's just like accumulation of a bunch of small things. And then one day you just realize, okay, I feel confident in this. Yeah. And so, it's like you said, man, and I'll say it again, it's messy. And just understanding that you have to be flexible. You will be CEO and janitor. You will be coordinator. You will be regulatory. You will be BD. You will be all of the things that you thought you were going to outsource or pay somebody to do. You will do them, or you have a rich uncle somewhere. But if you don't, you're going to wear a lot of hats. And that's one thing that I'll say this too. We do when we hire, we still come in the door and say, listen, this might be your job title, but you have to understand we wear hats in this company, and it's a part of our company culture. And so, it's something that we preach, and we've had good success so far.
Well, the next challenge, I haven't got there and you're there, is retaining employees, right? Like, just like anyone else in this industry, I mean, it's a hot market, right? So you got a lead coordinator you trained. It's your job to make sure they stay there, and that means being a good boss and helping them grow their career better, showing them that it's better with you than with someone else.
Right.
So that's the next challenge. Now, how does your, can you, I guess as we wrap up, we got to do more, but how's your company structured? Like how many PIs, how many sites? Do you have your own space yet, or is still in the offices?
Yep. So I do have my own space, and it's kind of funny you said that because as of this week, we kind of have our own space. We have two locations. We have a space in Columbus, and we have a space in Carrollton. And we have a new space here in Columbus that we've been moving into this week. So we have three PIs. We're looking to expand a little bit more East Coast. For those that are from the other side that don't, I'm talking about East Coast Georgia. And so, we're looking at that. But at the same time, we want to be smart and stabilizing the sites that we have now, and not just throwing somebody up there just because we can, or, we want to be smart about it. So, um, uh, two sites, three doctors, three coordinators, and a lot of motivation.
Hmm. Are the doctors, and you don't have to share if you don't want to, but are they business partners or are they contractors? How did you structure that?
It's all contractors. I'm the sole owner, and I'm going to keep that autonomy. I'm going to keep that ownership for certainly because, as I shared early in this, man, it's more than just making some dollars for me. I'm trying to make an impact, and so I don't want the influence from somebody's investment to try to dictate, my perspective, so to speak. So
Yeah.
yeah, every those guys are all contractors.
Okay. And then, so you have the office you started out in, that's the doctor's private practice.
Mhm.
And then you rented your own space, and now in the other city, about an hour and a half drive from you, is another doctor's office, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. And that's a whole nother podcast right there. Is like when you're the new guy in a doctor's private, like I'm here, I gotta lower my voice, but like there's a whole culture that they could care less about
Yep.
what you got going on, and it's your job to. I'm like you, I'm friendly, so I like talk to this MAs, and I got them helping me out now too. But initially, it's like, who are you? Like, what are you doing here? You can't have Wi-Fi password,
Right.
anything like that. Now I'm doing Zoom interviews in here for the podcast. It don't matter. But early on, it's like, people are a little touchy, and that's all. That could be a whole episode right there.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We'll be back. Oh yeah. Lot to share on that. Yeah.
A
Yeah.
lot, but I think it takes the right kind of personality, because you and I both know other CRAs that we've worked with that would not do well as site owners because they're so rigid, right?
Absolutely.
Like everything has to go their way, or like they don't know how to react. And like you said, as a site owner, it's more like your flight gets canceled and you gotta still make it home somehow.
Right. Right. Or to that next visit. You know what I mean? Like that's
Or
not
to
an
the next visit. Yeah.
So no, you're right, man. You definitely want, if you do desire to be a site owner, please ask people that know you, that really know you, get their perspective, and because you're going to need as a characteristic flexibility. You're going to need that. You're going to have to be amiable, agreeable. People are going to have to want to work with you, because I'll just say this real quick. What Dan's talking about, walking into somebody else's space is like walking into somebody else's home. And they'll tell you, hey, make yourself at home. But even that saying has its own restrictions, right? You're not going to jump in their bed, or, so you just have to be conscientious and be, wise, and be respectful, and just, work on building those relationships. But I said again, relationships are the key. They certainly are the key.
Yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right. Relationships, not just with sponsors and your PI, but with the people that work for your PI, even though they don't work for you.
Right.
You still have to have relationships with them,
Yep.
and respect their situation. Man, Jay, we can do this for like 2 more hours. We got to do it in person one of these days.
Yeah, man. Hey, one of us got to make the trip. You just let me know.
One of us does, but everybody connect with Jay. You still do LinkedIn, like underneath
Yeah,
the. Okay,
yeah.
so connect with Jay. It's very interesting to follow your career. And oh, I guess the last thing I want to ask is, do you think you could have done this had you just been a CRA and not been a coordinator?
Um, yes, I could have. Could I have done it as successfully? No, no.
Okay.
It's the same as a CRA. There's some. I don't know if I shared this in the last podcast or not, but there is almost a saying or a belief as a CRA that coordinators always make the best CRAs. That's kind of like a universal saying or a belief. And coming into it, I didn't have a dog in the fight. I was a coordinator. And I became a CRA, but working with those that became CRAs before coordinators, I fully agree. Because to dumb it down, you see things from other people's perspective. Even from the simple fact of being empathetic. You remember you see a coordinator that's running around doing 50,000 things because her boss decided to put 12 studies on her. You remember stuff like that. You remember
Yeah.
what working through a lunch or taking a short lunch, or you got to get up. You've sat down for 15 minutes to eat, and you got to get up because the patient decided to come in early. Little stuff like that. You don't forget those type of things. So I think having the life, I shouldn't say life skills, but the personal skills on how to deal with people from a from a CRC, a coordinated standpoint, so much more prepares you for CRA. And then the combination of those two, makes you a successful site owner.
That's a good answer, man. I agree. Yeah, I would agree with you on that. Absolutely, because now that I'm doing it again, we have CRAs. They say, you know what? You forgot a FDF, a financial disclosure for one of your sub-Is. Well, that doesn't sound like much, but to me, if I'm 20 miles away from my site
There you go.
and that sub-I is not there except like Thursdays, now I gotta wait till next week
Right.
on Thursday to go, and that's now I have to like not do other things.
Right.
For you, it's just a signature on a
Right.
paper. For me, it's like I gotta rearrange my week to
Right.
make that happen. So that's like a small example of what you're talking about. But absolutely, I would agree with you 100%, Jay.
Yeah.
Man, this is good. We gotta do more, Jay. So
Oh yeah.
everybody connect with Jay. Link to his LinkedIn underneath. And we'll do part 2, part 3. I mean, this is just. I feel like we'll grow old together in this industry, Jay. One of these days, we'll meet up at a conference or something.
Or a basketball game. We'll make it happen.
I'm switching to the Mavs. That Luka Doncic is something else, man. I'm becoming a huge fan.
He's something serious.
Hey, you guys got one too. I don't know if you're Atlanta Hawks, but Trae Young, I have his rookie card. He's a good one. He's a good one too.
Yeah, I follow Trae. I'm a Magic fan. I'm originally from Orlando, so I'm a Magic fan.
Okay.
Yeah, I keep up with the Hawks quite a bit, man. Those kids are growing, man, quickly.
Yeah, they are.
We'll do something. We'll do something.
All right, cool, man. Well, everybody go connect with Jay underneath. Questions about anything but site owner, other site owners network. Yep. We'll definitely do some networking too, Jay. Yeah. And we'll be in touch, Guru Nation. Thank you so much for watching and listening, everybody.